Let's talk to the Republican leaders in the state legislature. We have with us now House Speaker David Osborne and Senate President Robert Stivers. Gentlemen, thank you as always for taking the time. We really appreciate it this evening.
Good to be with you, Renee.
Yes,
thank you, Renee.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, I'll start with you since we're in your chamber. Give us your reaction to the governor's speech, his remarks tonight, the tone and what he communicated and shared.
Look, the governor delivers a great speech. He really has become a very skillful orator and does a great job of communicating. I still believe that the true test of the state of the Commonwealth is not something that is dictated to the people of Kentucky. I think every single person in Kentucky understands what their state of the Commonwealth is, and I think that's what continues to drive our policy, and I think that's what continues to drive voter habits.
So the point that we were just making, and you probably were getting mic'd up and may not have heard our conversation here in the studio with Sherman Brown and Amy Wycliffe about the kind of remarks that he made toward the end of his speech about let's kind of cease the talk on school choice, right, and other measures that the voters of Kentucky have said what they want. Where does that conversation go from here, Mr. Speaker?
Look, I think that, it's perfectly understandable and appropriate that the governor takes a victory dance on Amendment 2. I am a little bit, puzzled by the continued assertions that we are somehow defunding education, which everybody knows that we continue to fund education at record levels. Everybody knows that there was no proposal to have vouchers throughout Kentucky. Everybody knows that there was no tax scheme. So I'm a little disappointed that rhetoric continues, because I'll tell you what, we have funded education at record levels. We will continue to do so. But we will absolutely have a talk about accountability and the continued failures of education in Kentucky. We have over half of the kids in Kentucky that do not read at grade level. We have over half, less than a third that are proficient in math. I mean, those are levels that are not sustainable. And by every metric, even adjusted for inflation, regardless of what so-called economists continue to say, which are not economists, we continue to fund education at record levels. And even when presented with the opportunity to say that we needed to double down on education, the only intentional proposal that we ever get is more money. And I will tell you that we will not continue to shower more money on failing systems.
And that brings me to the point about low-performing schools, of course, which was the impetus behind the Constitutional Amendment number 2 that was on the ballot. There was a task force that was dedicated.
Let me disagree with you just a little bit,
go
Renee.
ahead,
I apologize for interrupting. But the impetus of Amendment 2 was not about failing schools. The impetus of Amendment 2 was about trying to help those kids that public schools are not serving adequately in today's systems. It was not about tearing down education. It was not about failing schools in particular. It's about failing kids. And unfortunately, we continue to fail kids in this state. And that's not something that I think that we can tolerate.
There are some, really quickly before I go to Mr. President, who would say that in order to kind of mitigate some of those kids who are falling behind, as you describe it, perhaps adopting a universal pre-K system would help them at those early ages to be intervened so that they can have a better start when they get to kindergarten. Your retort that why that's not a sound idea.
Look, I believe that there are legitimate arguments for pre-K. I know that the president disagrees vehemently with it. But also there are many in the education community, including the Pritchard Committee, that disagrees with that universal pre-K is the answer to the problems that we face. So I think if there is, again, we fail to see intentional, creative proposals from the education community on the way to lift up kids that are being failed right now. And until there is consensus, I don't believe that it's a proposal that this body is going to embrace.
Mr. President, I'll allow you to pick up on that point, if you will, if you want to talk about that, because you have made some very stern comments about that, and I'll let you do that. But also, if you can, in the context of your response, give your overall reaction to Governor Andy Beshear's remarks this evening.
Well, first of all, Renee, let me ask what that is, because there was a lot of comments about that. So which that are you talking about?
We're talking about universal pre-K, sir. We can start there. That was the that I was referring to.
Okay. Just clarifying.
Yes.
So, universal pre-K, I've always said this, that is not a solution or an answer to what I believe anything, because it does not look at a holistic approach, a school year calendar, those students from 4 to 6 o'clock, those students who or family members who need daycare on the second shift or weekends, those students or families that need daycare on the holidays or the summer vacations. Each and every school district or county or city is going to have to develop a policy of their own. And you're seeing it among many places in Clark County, actually in Corbin, in my district, where we're looking at creating 100 slots for daycare without dealing with the school system. And then you talk about our largest school system. I don't think you see many people in the JCPS talking about how we do universal daycare through the school systems with the Jefferson County Public Schools. So I think the speaker and I are both there on the same page. Money, people always want to make more money, but what is the innovative solution to get that child, that student, at level in the fourth grade, be it in mathematics or in reading?
So before I go back to the speaker, I do want to ask you, Mr. President, what are the priorities of the Senate Republican caucus this session? What do you want to get accomplished before you sine die March 30th?
Good question. And I heard Amy talk about some things briefly, but I think the speaker and I are on the same page. The governor talked about all the successes that have been taking place, and I think he should turn around and look at the legislature when he talks about all the indices and how we have had the good credit ratings and all the indexes that are better. That all started really in 2016. And you saw the job creation start then. You saw us get control of our pensions. You saw us get control of our budget reserves. You saw us do a whole lot of things through the policies we adopted. The person who got the benefit of this, who gets to announce these types of situations, announced not necessarily because of the efforts of the administration, happened to be this current governor. And it's due to the fact that in 16, my partner in developing legislation became David Osborne and the House Republicans, and all the things you read in the respective reports about our ratings are all the things we started to change that year.
So if I can go back to the speaker today, of course, House Bill 1, which reduces the state income tax by another 0.5% to 3.5%, passed the House A&R committee, expecting a House floor vote tomorrow. There was a question that one of the Democrats asked a new member of leadership, Al Gentry, in the committee about what's the philosophy and the rationale for taking this approach? What do you want to gain, and how do you know it's working?
Well, I think the rationale is that we clearly have an economy that is doing well, and we, under our current tax system, are taking in more money than we need, and to leave those dollars in the pockets of hardworking Kentuckians is our goal. And I think it's a very simply stated goal. I continue to find it amazing that the fallacy that the governor somehow thinks that we cut taxes on income is absurd, given the fact that we vetoed it, or that he vetoed it and we overrode it. As a matter of fact, probably the governor's single largest legislative accomplishment has been the fact that we override his vetoes, because the things that have driven the growth in this state, the things that have caused prosperity, just about, I think most people would struggle to think of any pro-growth policies that he has led on that we haven't overridden vetoes on.
So I don't want to ruin the conversation from Monday night when you join us with the Democratic leaders, but I have one more question about opening the budget. Do you foresee that happening this legislative session that is a non-budget year? And what would be the reasons for why you would open up the budget?
Look, at this point, I don't anticipate that we will. Even though it's a short session, it's a long time between now and the end of March. So I'm not willing to proclaim that we absolutely will not. But I don't believe that you will see us undertake any large spending measure in this session. I generally think, even though we've done it in the past, we've done it because of some instances that required us some external influences that required us to do so. I just don't believe that you're going to see us do that. But certainly, if the opportunity presents, we look at, clearly we have the one of the largest budget reserves that we've ever had, one of the largest in the country. That presents us a lot of opportunity. We stopped calling it the rainy day fund because it's not just for bad times. It is to allow us to take advantage of opportunities. And if those opportunities present us with the ability to do something, then certainly we stand ready to do that. But I don't think that you will see an intentional desire to just go out and spend money. I think that when we started embarking on responsible budgeting and based our budgeting on needs and versus wants, we've kind of put an end to just trying to look for ways to spend money.
You agree with that, President Stivers?
I do. And if I could go back to something you asked the speaker about how we know the things that we are doing are impacting this state in a positive way, all the things the governor just talks about. He doesn't set policy. We do. He executes. He executes on the policy we do. So with that policy that we have put forward, and I have talked to many of the CEOs and individuals who have moved here, they say it is the policies that have been set forth by the General Assembly that are attractive to them. And then the governor goes out and recruits on those policies. Secondly, I just returned from a national conference, which I was with a group of leaders from respective Senate chambers all over the United States. And we were looking at all the demographics and all the different changes. If you want to see where the growth is occurring in this United States, you look at the states that we are either working with, emulating, or replicating. And that's where you're seeing both job retention, job growth, and individuals moving to. And it's all through the South. And they're doing the same things we're doing, or we're doing the same things they are doing.
Well, thank you, Senate President Robert Stivers and House Speaker David Osborne. As I alluded to a moment ago, you will be joining me, I think, in the Lexington studio, hopefully, weather permitting, Monday night on KET's Kentucky Tonight. Thank you, gentlemen.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Renee.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have with us a Democratic response, if we will. We have the new House Minority Floor Leader with us, Pam Stevenson, and Gerald Neal, who is the Senate Minority Floor Leader. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for sticking around.
Hello, Renee.
Well, I want to go to Leader Stevenson first. First of all, congratulations on your new position. I haven't had a chance to tell you that. Tell us your response to what the governor said and the way he said it this evening.
I am so excited because every place I go, no matter what part of this state, all people want is for their families to work, good jobs, for their children to be safe, and good education. And when they get sick or get a little headache, they like to go to the doctor. When we talk about what families need, Kentucky grows, and it means that people thrive. We're here for a short time, as the governor alluded to, and this is the time we've got to make it work for the people that put us in these offices.
Leader Neal, your response, sir.
I think the governor did an excellent job of not only saying that we're on the move, and Kentucky is on the move, but he's saying we must stay on the move and we must work together. He was promoting and laying the foundation for continuing bipartisanship and not being small about it. He's carrying out his role, and the legislature carries out its role. This is the way it works in every state. So this whole thing about who did what when, no, we all perform a role here. The legislature appropriates, it sets policy. The governor administers, sells our projects, entices people to come in and support the aspirations and economic viability of our state, and that's what the governor's doing, and that's what we're trying to do at the legislative level. And it's not easy. There's still going to be problems. There are going to be things that are coming that's going to make it difficult for us. We're going to have to adjust to, and those are things that we have to work together to overcome. So I think he's laid the foundation for us to work together and do even better.
Leader Neal, though, did you expect to hear from him more of a policy agenda that he wanted to put forth for lawmakers to consider? He mentioned a couple of things that we've heard in the past, but they were almost treated as footnotes and not big policy moves or proposals. Would you have wanted more?
Well, you know, what I really want is the legislature to not just say it's working in a bipartisan way, but actually to follow through on what that means in every step that they make. They need to truly work with this governor. We do live in a political environment. There's no question about that. So my expectation and what I got tonight was he was inspiring us. He was putting it down. Here's where we are. Here's what we've done. We're on the right track. Let's work together and go forward. I think he did an excellent job in doing that.
Leader Stevenson, what is the posture of the House Democrats, being 1920 in membership? What will you do, or what will you try to do to make your position, your role relevant in this legislative session?
Well, if you look at what the governor said is, when we keep families in the center of all our decisions, then things work out for everyone. We are reaching out across the aisle because he set a context for us. This is the context. Whatever you do, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but whatever you do, we need to make sure that Kentucky thrives. And if we focus on keeping the main thing, if we focus on the areas that we agree upon, then we can move Kentucky. And that's what everybody here wants. So we always have to look at, given that it's 19 to 80, what can we do? Those numbers don't even come into play when everyone is focused on every child going to school and not being hungry. Those numbers don't even come into play when we talk about let's get rid of homelessness and make sure that every family is thriving. When you keep the main thing, then the solutions to the problems facing us become apparent.
The main thing tomorrow on the House floor will be a vote on House Bill 1 that reduces the income tax to 3.5%. 3 Democrats in the House Appropriations and Revenue Committee today did not cast a vote on that measure. Will you vote for that measure if it comes up on the floor tomorrow, and will you encourage your fellow Democratic caucus members to do the same?
What we have said is this. We know that Kentucky families are suffering, that they don't get up, like the governor said, worried about who's in charge. They get up worried about how they're going to put food on their table, how they're going to get to the doctor, how they're going to make sure that their family thrives. And they look forward to having a little bit more money in their pockets. So we're looking at how can we provide the services that the family can provide, roads, education, health care, and at the same time put money back in their pockets. We want to make sure that families thrive short-term and long-term, because that's the only way Kentucky's going to rise.
So you're going to vote in favor of House Bill 1 if it comes up on the House floor tomorrow or in the near future?
I am going to vote for, I don't know, Renee. I'm still looking at the evidence. I got to make sure it says it does exactly what it says it's going to do, and then I'm going to do what's best for the families in my district.
Okay, Senator Neal, I want to ask you that question because that bill will probably come to you perhaps when you reconvene for Part 2 of the legislative session in February. The Senate will receive House Bill 1 that reduces that state income tax. Where are you and your caucus on that issue?
Well, first of all, you need to understand that we support the idea that if we can put more money into taxpayers' pockets, fine. We want to empower folks. But here's what our concern is. When I say our, I think I'm speaking for the broad breadth of our caucus. That is that there is a reality out there. If you go down this road too far, what happens is the services that are now in place, some of which are still, I would argue, are underfunded, where is that money going to come from? You're going to either have to use some other mechanism like sales tax, which is a regressive tax, or you're going to have to do away with certain services because you can't generate the funds for doing that. What's really interesting to me is that there's been no laying out of what we do as we go down this road. Only thing we did was put something, a trigger in place. And we do have some ideas or some indications like what happened in Kansas when they had to retreat from this very road. We know that in Tennessee they had to raise their sales tax, and people over there are coming over to Kentucky to make purchases, etc. So there are consequences. What I want to hear, not just from the majority in this particular process, but from anyone, any source, and I can't find it, where are we going to deal with that? So the question and my concern is we go too far, and that's my caucus concern. So, yes, we want to make sure that the people at the end of the road, which means Kentucky, is benefiting, but we can go too far, and we ought to have a plan and a road plan for doing that. We don't have that as of yet. So I'm advocating that. I'm likely to vote no. But that doesn't mean some other person in my caucus might want to vote yes. That's up to them. But we'll make that determination when we're confronted with this, and we'll do it in a way that we understand that we're trying to create better policy to meet what we have to meet going into the future. Let me point out another thing. There are indications now, notwithstanding anything you've heard, that we're not going to have the same playing ground in terms of fiscal. Think about it. The government, and when I talk about the government, I'm talking about the federal government, is now cutting off or phasing out the funds that they bought over a period of time. That enabled us to do certain things. We have entities now that are bringing economic development in our communities, but guess what? Some of that's going to be uneven in terms of how it's going to fund state processes and state services that we rely on. I'm talking about education. I'm talking about in the health area and really actually across the board. So I want to hear the plan. It's good because now we got that money. We had that flush of money over a period of time because of circumstances that have convened on us as we are now. But we do have a future, and we're going to have to deal with that. I do not hear the plan for that, and that's what my concern is.
Well, thank you, Leaders Neal and Stevenson. We'll see you both as well on Monday night at 8 p.m. on KET's Kentucky Tonight to talk more about all of this and the rest of the session that lies ahead. Thank you very much. See you Monday night.
Look forward to it.
Bye-bye.
All right.